Hey everyone, and welcome back to my COD Zombies Retrospective series, a series on my channel looking back at the COD Zombies maps of old, how they play nowadays, their cut content, story, lore and more. And today we've got celebrity cameos, a legendary director and a movie film set gone wrong in Call of the Dead.
Years ago I did research for a World War II movie. I came across some old Nazi documents. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Element 115, necromancers, raising the dead, real creepy stuff.
We're completely surrounded! Come on!
The coolest thing? Some of that crazy shit happened right here.
So Call of the Dead releasing on May 3rd in 2011 for Black Ops 1 as a part of the Escalation Map Pack DLC pack. Call of the Dead gives us our first ever celebrity cast in a Call of Duty game, taking us to a film set in Siberia from a former Group 935 facility. Call of the Dead took everything provided so far in maps like World at War, Kino, 5 and Ascension, and built upon the gameplay and map size even further, as Ascension was already big, but then Call of the Dead set out to be even bigger. With the map's description being as follows: a shipwrecked crew of fearless explorers is hopelessly stranded in an abandoned Siberian outpost. Their dream of discovering the true origins of Element 115 unravels into a hellish nightmare. Call of the Dead is an absolute classic, and it's just so frustratingly close to being perfect, and it's so close to being up there with maps like Shadows of Evil and Mob of the Dead and Der Eisendrache. Call of the Dead also reuses assets from the campaign level in Black Ops 1 titled Project Nova. However, don't get that wrong and don't get it twisted, Call of the Dead is its own experience specifically made for zombies. At this time we were sort of transitioning from obviously reusing campaign levels and multiplayer levels like in World at War and early Black Ops 1, and then it then transferred over into making zombies its own team, its own mode with its own specific maps. At the time, Call of the Dead was touted as a very unique and special project at Treyarch, not like anything else they had made before for the Call of Duty franchise. Call of the Dead was made with the celebrity cast and George Romero in mind, and became an instant fan favourite in the entire community, even pulling in the casual audience for using real-world actors and integrating them with the overarching Black Ops 1 storyline. Treyarch could have made a one-off, non-canon map, with celebrities, but instead they chose to make George's movie fit straight into everything around it with Group 935 and Richtofen's grand plan. And speaking of which, now let's dive into the story and the lore of Call of the Dead. Call of the Dead occurs in an abandoned Group 935 Siberian outpost which features a shipwrecked freighter, a vibrant lighthouse, and a sparse coast, and its story is actually split into two halves: the present day, which takes place in 2011 with our celebrities and George, and then the story of the German facility in World War II set in the 1930s and 40s. The story of the map goes as follows. After entering the rift from Ascension, Ultimus arrives at the Siberian facility in 2011 where they find themselves trapped in a closet. Outside though, George A. Romero is filming his latest movie on location with the actors Sarah Michelle Gellar, who's best known for playing Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Danny Trejo, who's best known for Spy Kids as well as Machete, Robert Englund, who is best known for A Nightmare on Elm Street, and finally Michael Rooker, who's better known for his roles in Guardians of the Galaxy and The Walking Dead. However, on the movie set, Samantha unleashes an outbreak to try and kill Ultimus, during which George is turned into a zombie, and then the film stars fight the undead on the facility in the ice and the rain and the cold. They then come into contact with Ultimus in the closet and are then instructed via Richtofen to get them the Vril device, also known as the Golden Rod, to send them to paradise, i.e. Shangri-La. Richtofen here essentially tricks the rest of the Ultimus cast. As part of the Easter egg, he instructs the Call of the Dead cast members to get them drunk via using vodka. He then uses the vodka to get the rest of the characters drunk, so he can then in turn trick the Call of the Dead cast into getting him the Golden Rod. The crew then do this for Richtofen, but we still to this day don't actually really know what happened to the Call of the Dead cast after the main Easter egg. After Call of the Dead, it's implied that George and the cast either die or go missing, even stating so in the map Revelations, with later on the entire cast as well as George A. Romero from Call of the Dead disappearing, with George's assistant Sally then going to find him, with herself even being trapped in time in Shangri-La. So those are all of the events from 2011, but what about the events from the past leading up to Call of the Dead, as well as the creation of the facility itself? Well, the history of the Siberian facility is told to us both within Call of the Dead and its remake Tag der Toten in Black Ops 4. Back during World War II, Group 935 owned the facility and created it to research the 115 meteorite that crashes near the Tunguska River. It's here where Dr. Richtofen is testing on the 4 test subjects, being Nikolai, Takio and Dempsey. However, one before them being Pablo Marinez, who again we actually get to meet in Tag der Toten. However, during the sort of testing from Richtofen, Pablo dies during these experiments with his spleen hanging on the floor, leading to Richtofen then getting in Dempsey as a test subject to replace him. The goals of these experiments were to wipe these test subjects' memories and then turn them into brain-controlled soldiers, with the overall goal from Dr. Maxis being to create an undead army. It's here where we hear in radios during the pass to the facility that Dr. Richtofen has also grown tired of Dr. Maxis, repeatedly denying his pleas to mass reduce the teleporters and the Wunderwaffe DG2, and it's here where Group 935 is later disbanded in the 1950s after the failure of World War II on the German front, and then Richtofen vows to carry out a plan of destruction, murder, time travel and world universal domination, and then circles back into our Call of the Dead story with the Vril device in 2011, with obviously them then tricking the cast into fulfilling his goals. So let's talk about all of the new gameplay features on Call of the Dead. So Call of the Dead actually builds on the World at War and Black Ops 1 formula yet again, with even the introduction of dynamic weather for the first ever time in zombies, being the fog. The fog is actually used to hide zombies and obstruct the overall view of the player, whilst also introducing us to George A. Romero and the Call of the Dead cast and crew, as the fog only appears when George enters the map for the first time. The legendary film director best known for Night of the Living Dead, as well as horror classic, as well as even being nicknamed the Godfather of Zombies, acts as Call of the Dead's main boss zombie. This was the first time in zombies where we'd had an actual boss zombie. I mean, sure, we'd had Nova 6 crawlers, monkeys, hellhounds, but we hadn't really had a main boss. Back in the day in World at War, Nacta and Toten, there were rumours of like a Hitler boss and things like that, a super boss if you got to round 100, that just never happened. But in Call of the Dead, we finally got that in the form of George. George is very interesting in terms of how he's designed, because George actually roams around the map following the player at all times. Having a massive amount of health whilst moving really slowly, George can actually be killed, resulting in a death machine dropping as well as a free perk drop, similar to how in Ascension you could get free perks from the monkeys. George also becomes enraged when shot or damaged, or if you kill zombies in his general vicinity, he becomes enraged, running after you as well as trying to electrify zombies around him. If you're not careful, especially in close quarters scenarios, George can be a real nuisance. Call of the Dead also adds a new traversal option around the map, similar to the teleporters and the lunar landers before it. Aboard the boat, there's a flinger that can take you to the other side of the map very quickly, an icy slide for quick getaways, as well as just being really cool to just slide down the ice and into the water, as well as 2 zip lines to access both sides of the map very quickly. Call of the Dead also has no buyable traps on it, making it very difficult for high round straps. I mean, you can kill zombies with the flinger, but again, this isn't a test and true method, as you'd have to, navigate the very large map very quickly to just go back and forth with the flinger, then go back to the lighthouse and etc. Call of the Dead also adds for the first time ever icy water that can directly affect the player. In the water you move a lot slower, being able to jump to get around a bit quicker, sort of how the water works in Shinonuma as well as the mud in maps like Origins. However, the water here is even more deadly, as players can actually freeze completely. If you stay in the water too long, your screen will actually display ice around the edge, a feature that is also carried over into Tag der Toten. If you freeze, then you'll turn into an icicle block, meaning that other players can shoot you out of it, or you'll have to try and knife your way out of it, making it so that if you're surrounded by a train of zombies and you freeze to death if you can't get out of the water quick enough, then you can go down very quickly here. Call of the Dead also features 2 brand new wonder weapons, the Scavenger and the VR11. The Scavenger is really cool, and I'm really surprised that it's never come back to zombies since Call of the Dead. It's never been remastered, it's never been put in something like Black Ops 4, it's just never come back. The Scavenger fires an explosive bolt, killing all zombies in the vicinity. However, the explosion is delayed, making it not completely overpowered. Also, the Scavenger just sounds so cool, pack-a-punch, but on the other end of the spectrum, the VR11 on the other hand is just trash. It's one of the worst, if not the worst, wonder weapon. I'd say that this weapon is a very strong contender for the worst wonder weapon ever put into any of the COD zombie modes. This is including both Infinite Warfare as well as Exo Zombies, World War II Zombies. I'd argue and say the VR11 is up there, at least in the top 3 for worst wonder weapons. The VR11 turns a zombie back into a human. If you shoot a zombie, they turn into a CIA operative very briefly. Then they run around the map, drawing all the zombies to the human. It acts sort of like how the monkey bomb acts, but it's more of like a roaming monkey bomb. A human that uses the same model from Black Ops 2, mind you, but the VR11 can also calm George down if enraged. You can actually shoot George with the VR11 and it will completely send him back to normal. The only problem is that, other than it being completely useless outside of the Easter egg, it does have the ability to gain, if you shoot other players, they get insta-kill very briefly when shooting, zombies and things like that. But when compared to things like the Scavenger, the Thunder Gun and things like that, it's just not effective at all, and it's just completely useless trash. Honestly, the VR11 sucks. Call of the Dead also has a brand new perk. I really miss back in the days where you'd have the tradition of a brand new perk per map, or even sometimes 2 new perks. But the new perk for Call of the Dead obviously being Deadshot Daiquiri. Deadshot Daiquiri improves aim assist to the head, basically drawing your sight to a zombie's head much quicker, as well as increasing headshot damage. But again, when compared to the 4 classic OG World at War perks, PhD Flopper and even Stamina Up, I'd say Deadshot Daiquiri is probably the worst perk inside of World at War and Black Ops 1, as its benefits just aren't as required as something like PhD, Stamina Up, Jug, Quick Revive. It's just, I'd say in Black Ops 1 it's probably the worst perk, just because, again, headshot damage isn't really that much of a necessity. In Call of the Dead, you also get the return of the Matryoshka dolls, as well as the sickle returning from Ascension, as this map does take place in more of a Russian environment. Everything on Call of the Dead is designed for long sights, being Deadshot Daiquiri obviously being far away to focus in with headshots, the Scavenger having its own scope that you can zoom in similar to a sniper rifle, but then this also conflicts with the map. The map actually conflicts with itself, with things like the fog obstructing the players, as well as George's overall design, the fact that he's always following you around. I feel like if the fog just wasn't here, or if it was, I guess, nerfed in some way, the map would just be a lot better. So next up, let's talk about all the different appearances of Call of the Dead, and other than Black Ops 1, Call of the Dead also features inside of iOS Zombies, where the map is essentially a watered down version with much worse graphics and different UI specifically meant for iOS back in time of 2011. Call of the Dead was also then later remade as Tag der Toten inside of Black Ops 4, the last main story Eva map from the old story. Tag der Toten will get its own dedicated video in this series in the future, but Tag der Toten features the Victus characters, which was a nice change of pace, especially for Black Ops 4, as they just hadn't appeared since Black Ops 2's Buried. And it also takes place back in time in the 1940s and features the original 935 facility above the lighthouse, as well as brand new areas, fixing old mechanics from Call of the Dead, taking place at daytime opposed to nighttime, and also features a nice tribute to George Romero, as sadly at that point he'd actually passed away in 2017, with Tag der Toten coming out in 2018. On Tag der Toten you can go to a table and find George Romero's glasses, where you'll not only get some points, but one of the Victor's characters will also give him a bit of a nice tribute, a bit of a nice send-off in the form of a character quote. So in terms of Easter eggs, Call of the Dead steps things up by featuring the first ever Easter egg in Black Ops 1 to feature a reward in the form of an achievement for completion. The quest, titled either Ensemble Cast or Stand In, features the Call of the Dead crew working with Ultimus Richtofen in the closet to get him the golden rod, as well as teleporting them to Shangri-La. Some of my favourite steps in this Easter egg include getting the crew some vodka, Morse code via foghorns as well as the dials in the lighthouse, as well as using the VR11 to sacrifice a human to present you with the golden rod. This is also one of the first Easter eggs in the time to feature a solo Easter egg opposed to the 4-player co-op one, because back at, for example, in Ascension you needed 4 players, but Call of the Dead you can complete the Easter egg on solo, you get a different achievement, slightly different rewards, as well as the fact that some of the steps such as the dials and the foghorns are taken out of the Easter egg entirely. Once completed, this Easter egg will award an achievement, a gamer picture if you're on Xbox, as well as some really funny dialogue from Ultimus in the closet, as well as a max ammo and the Wunderwaffe DG2. Now, this version of the Wunderwaffe acts more like a power drop, similar to a death machine for example, as it cannot be upgraded and actually disappears completely once all the ammo is used, but it can be replenished by using a max ammo, and it's still the classic Wunderwaffe DG2, it still works pretty much the same, and it's a really nice reward for completing this Easter egg. This map also includes a musical Easter egg once again, which is activated by pressing on 3 115 meteorites around the map to activate the song Not Ready to Die by Avenged Sevenfold, making this the second ever map in COD Zombies history to feature a song that is not written by Kevin Sherwood. In terms of Easter eggs outside of the map and inside of the map also features radios from Richtofen talking about his experiments, as well as the test subjects and everything that happened back at the old facility in the 1940s, as well as an Avenged Sevenfold painting cameo in terms of the band's members appearing on a picture on the wall. This appears outside of the closet where the main Easter egg takes place, as well as more wall notes, out-of-bound glitches, as well as out-of-bound notes and things like that, and more connecting it to the story of maps like Verrucht, Shinonuma and Ascension. In fact, the comic loading screen, because back in the day zombies used to have comic book loading screens, in the corners you can actually see that each page is torn off in the corner, revealing potentially the next map. For example, on Call of the Dead, in the top left you have Ascension, whereas in the top right we had a bit of a snippet or a teaser for Shangri-La. Now this was really cool at the time because we didn't know Shangri-La was going to be the next map, which is just fantastic, and I've got to be honest, I really miss these comic book loading screens, and I'm hoping that one day Treyarch really brings them back, as it just gave the community so much to talk about. Not only that, from a graphic design and art perspective, they look fantastic. Okay, so next up is a brand new section in this series called Growing Pains. These are going to be issues I have with the map, and I'm also going to give suggestions on how I would redesign them or fix them if they're ever brought back. So first off, let's talk about the fog. The fog is really annoying as you just cannot see other players from far away, as well as it really ruins, in my opinion, the horror beauty of this map. Although fog can add ambiance and theming to a map, I feel like the fog does more to hinder the player than it does to actually, bring out the ambiance of the map, for example. And I think they should have just made it so that either the fog is present on the map until power is turned on, or the fog is present on the map until George is killed, giving another incentive for killing George as he's the main boss with a zombie. The fog actually first appears when George, emerges out of the water in round 1, so I feel like it's only fitting that once George is defeated, the fog then goes away permanently. Next up is George A. Romero, and speaking of George, he really annoys me on this map. You see, on Call of the Dead high rounds they're really difficult on Call of the Dead just to get to, the hundreds and whatnot, as not only are there no traps, as in buyable traps such as the flogger or electrical traps, there's nothing like that on Call of the Dead, but it's also in some areas a really close quarters tight map, especially with George following you around at all times. Now, when I've spoken to other friends and members of the zombies community, George Romero is kind of like Marmite. You either love him or you hate him, in terms of, not being a director, but in terms of the actual boss mechanics of the map. He follows you around at all times, and when killed, he only comes back in like 3 rounds anyway, and personally, if I were to redesign George or change George, I would have changed George to maybe for example, if you go around a corner or far away on the map, he'll actually lose sight of you and then he'll wander around the map trying to find you until he can physically see you again, and once he sees you again, he'll then start following you again, similar to sort of like Mr. X from Resident Evil 2, for example. Or just make it so that when he's killed permanently, making him a boss on the map, or maybe even making him a boss for the main quest Easter egg, as I think having George at all times just gets really annoying, especially when you're trying to train around zombies and you accidentally enrage him. And lastly, the VR11. Honestly, this thing sucks. I talked about it earlier, but I liked the idea of using it to calm George down instantly, so I'd actually keep that feature in the game, but I'd change the VR11 so that when you shoot a zombie, it turns it into a CI agent like normal, but maybe have the agent either fight off the zombies similar to infected or brain rot abilities later seen in like Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4 and Cold War, or have it so that the agent runs away and then creates a massive explosion similar to the Scavenger, capable of killing an entire small group of zombies or an entire train at once. I feel like that would be far more overpowered, because currently the VR11 is completely useless, and I feel like killing zombies with it as well would make it viable. And next up we have Trivia Time. This is the section in the series where I give you some cool facts and ideas that you maybe didn't know about Call of the Dead. So, did you know, in the map Revelations, which will get its own video later on in the series, a radio can be found located in the Shangri-La section of the map, which states that the Call of the Dead cast and crew as well as George have been missing for 6 weeks in Siberia, with George's assistant Sally trying to find them. Did you know, the location of this map takes place near the Tunguska River in Russia, which is where a meteor struck in 1908 known as the Tunguska event, making a really cool connection to the Siberian facility and Group 935. Did you know, the name of this map is actually a reference to both the title of the Call of Duty series overall, as well as George Romero's The Dead series of horror films, as George Romero is a horror director legend, best known for films like Night of the Living Dead. And finally, did you know, in the intro cutscene of the map, when Michael Rooker is shooting a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun at the zombies, he actually fires 3 shots instead of 2 from one gun without reloading it, making this a really interesting mistake, as if you don't know, obviously a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun can only fire 2 shots at a time, making this a really nice mistake to just have in the opening cutscene. So in conclusion, Call of the Dead was just a really unique and cool map at the time. In Black Ops 1 and Zombies in general, we'd never seen real life celebrities, cameos, and the director George A. Romero in Zombies, making it possible for maps like Dead of the Night, Shadows of Evil, and Mob of the Dead later on to also include celebrity casts. Call of the Dead tells a story of Group 935's facility as a backdrop for this fictional movie being filmed, whilst also tying it perfectly into Richtofen's grand scheme to get him the golden rod to then later on end up for the events on Moon and Black Ops 1. But for me, Call of the Dead is very frustrating. In my opinion, Call of the Dead had the potential to be a top 5 map of all time. We're counting every single Zombies mode we've had so far, because Call of the Dead had a great layout. It's one of the best main quest Easter eggs of all time in my opinion. It has good perk variety, the Scavenger's a fantastic wonder weapon, as well as other cool features which just stand out, make Call of the Dead stand out in general. But the thing really, the things that really let down this map are things like the fog being unnecessary, especially later on when you're playing the game, certain areas not circling back or looping back into one another, which was actually addressed in the layout of Tag the Toten. For example, the spawn area, you can't get behind Quick Revive and go back to the lighthouse that way. You have to go round all the way around the map to get back to the lighthouse. It's very annoying to traverse sometimes, as well as George just generally being annoying when training and trying to move around the map, as he was actually designed to stop camping, and they definitely achieved that with George, as well as the fact that the VR11 is just a complete waste of time outside the Easter egg. But to me, Call of the Dead will always be an instant classic. There's just nothing like Call of the Dead. It's a fictional movie that feels like you're playing in a fictional movie with the celebrity cast, the really cool backdrop, and the horror elements implemented not only with the zombie storyline, but with George and the lighting and the weather effects and things like that. So everyone, thank you so much for watching the video today, and if you want to learn about more Zombies maps, I've got Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2 and World at War maps in the series. I'll have a couple on screen now, as well as the end card of this video, and there'll also be a link to the overall playlist in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and for more videos on my channel dedicated to Call of Duty Zombies, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I hope you all have a fantastic day today, and take care. Bye. Thank you.